He's already decided whether you're the one. Not through conversation, not through chemistry, not through the perfect dates you think went so well, through tests you didn't even know you were taking. Every cancelled plan, every unanswered text, every moment of distance you thought it was confusion or bad timing. But here's what's actually happening. He's evaluating not your beauty or your availability or how much you like him. He's testing whether you're strong enough to handle what comes after the attraction fades. And the woman who passes, she never even realizes she's being tested because she's too grounded in herself to notice. You felt it. That shift when everything seemed perfect. Then suddenly he pulls back, goes cold for days, mentions another woman casually, cancels plans with barely an explanation. And you spiral trying to understand what changed, what you did wrong, how to fix it, but nothing changed. This is exactly what he intended. Because men don't test women they're planning to forget. They test the ones they're actually considering keeping. And your response to each test is either building his certainty or destroying it completely. The devastating truth, most women eliminate themselves within weeks. Not because they lack value, but because they respond from desperation instead of strength. They text twice when he doesn't respond. They accommodate disrespect to avoid conflict. They dim their achievements to make him comfortable. They become smaller, quieter, more agreeable, believing that's what keeps him interested. And in every accommodation, every chase, every moment of dimming themselves, they confirm exactly what he was testing for. That their worth is flexible, that their boundaries don't exist, that their entire world can be shaken by his absence. The woman he actually commits to, she responds so differently, it changes his entire perception of her. So we're breaking down the entire system in this video. Not so you can manipulate or play games, but so you finally understand what's really being evaluated beneath every interaction. Because once you see these tests clearly, you'll stop wasting energy trying to prove yourself to men who are watching whether you already know your worth. Stay with me. Because the women who understand this naturally attract commitment while others are abandoned, wondering what went wrong. Let's expose exactly why men secretly test women they truly want. When a man meets a woman who genuinely captures his serious interest, his behavior shifts in ways most women misinterpret completely. He doesn't pursue harder, he evaluates deeper. And this evaluation doesn't look like traditional romance. It looks like inconsistency. It looks like withdrawal. It looks like he's deliberately testing your patience. Because that's precisely what's happening. High-value men operate from learned experience. They've seen attraction disappear, chemistry fade, availability masquerade as compatibility. So when someone actually matters, they don't accelerate forward blindly. They slow down. They create space. They observe how you function when his attention isn't constantly feeding your emotional state. Because any woman can be delightful when a man is pouring effort into her. But how does she respond when that effort temporarily stops? That reveals everything. This brings us to the first invisible evaluation, the attention withdrawal test. He shifts from consistent communication to sudden silence. Not permanently, just long enough to observe your response. Most women panic immediately. They send follow-up messages, ask if something's wrong, try re-engaging with questions or stories, or subtle attempts to reclaim his attention. And that panic exposes exactly what he's testing for. Whether your emotional stability depends on his validation. The woman who passes, she doesn't panic because her inner state isn't controlled by his texting frequency. She continues fully engaged in her own life. And when he resurfaces, she's warm but not relieved, present but not desperate. That response communicates everything he needs to know. Men don't withdraw because interest disappeared. They withdraw to see if you'll chase. Because a woman who chases during withdrawal will eventually exhaust him in a relationship. She'll require constant reassurance, endless validation, perpetual proof of his investment. But the woman who remains steady, who trusts the connection without needing to control it, becomes magnetic. Her calmness during his absence makes him return not from obligation, but genuine desire. Here's what most women miss entirely. When he tests your response to withdrawal, he's not being manipulative. He's protecting himself from future emotional chaos. He's determining whether you're stable enough to weather the natural fluctuations every relationship faces. Because life isn't constant attention. Life is pressure, distance, distraction, challenge, and if you completely fall apart when he simply doesn't text back for a day, how will you handle real adversity? The second test operates even more subtly, the boundary test. He does something small that crosses a line, cancels plans last minute, makes a comment that feels slightly disrespectful, assumes you'll rearrange your schedule around his convenience. And what he's actually doing, checking whether you have standards or if you're so desperate for his approval that you'll accept anything to keep him around. Most women fail by accommodating immediately. They laugh off disrespect. They say it's fine when plans get cancelled even though they're disappointed inside. They bend and adjust and rationalize his behavior because they fear that holding a boundary will push him away. But here's the paradox nobody tells you. The moment you abandon your boundaries to keep him, you've already lost him. Because what he's actually searching for is a woman who values herself enough to walk away from what doesn't serve her. The woman who passes responds to boundary violations calmly but clearly. She doesn't explode or deliver ultimatums. She simply states reality. That doesn't work for me, or I'm not changing my plans, or I expect better. And then she continues with her day, no lingering resentment, no passive aggression, just clear communication and self-respect. That response triggers something powerful in his psychology. It tells him she's not another woman willing to shrink herself to fit into his life. She's someone who knows her value, and that value makes him rise to meet it. Think about what's being communicated when everything is easy, when every boundary bends, when every disrespect gets forgiven. That she's not valuable enough to require effort, that she's not rare enough to protect, that she's not high value, just available. And men don't commit to available, they commit to valuable. The woman who maintains her standards, even when it risks losing him, paradoxically becomes the one he can't afford to lose. Then comes the third test. And this one separates the women he's considering from the women he's already decided about. The jealousy test. He mentions another woman casually, an ex who reached out, a co-worker who's interesting. Or he doesn't respond immediately because he's somewhere other women are present. And he watches. He watches to see if you'll spiral into insecurity, if you'll probe for details, if you'll try competing for his attention or staking your claim. Most women react emotionally without realizing it. They ask questions designed to extract reassurance. They make subtle comments about the other woman. They become noticeably possessive or visibly insecure. And in that reaction, they reveal their deepest fear, that they're not enough, that he might choose someone else, that their position isn't secure. But the woman who passes, she doesn't react at all. Not because she's pretending indifference, but because she genuinely trusts her own value. She knows that if he's the right man, no other woman threatens that, and if he's not the right man, no amount of jealousy will make him stay. Her lack of jealousy creates an unexpected effect. It makes him see her as fundamentally different from every other woman he's encountered. Because most women, even confident ones, show cracks when another woman enters the picture. But when she remains unchanged, calm, and secure, he realizes she's not operating from scarcity. She's operating from abundance. And abundance is intoxicating to a man seeking a long-term partner. Here's the deeper psychology at work. Men don't want relationships with women who need them to avoid all other women to feel secure. That feels like imprisonment. They want women who trust them, trust themselves, and know that real connection can't be threatened by external circumstances. When you pass the jealousy test, you communicate emotional maturity for an adult relationship built on trust, not control. The fourth test reveals more than any other. The success test. When something good happens in your life, when you achieve something, when you receive attention or celebration, he observes how you handle it. Do you shrink yourself to make him comfortable? Do you downplay your wins to avoid outshining him? Or do you own your success completely, without apology, without seeking his permission to be proud? Most women unconsciously diminish their light around men they're interested in. They've been conditioned to believe men have fragile egos, that success might intimidate him, that being too much pushes him away. So they minimize achievements, redirect praise, or simply don't share their wins at all. And in doing so, they fail the test catastrophically. Because a high-value man isn't threatened by a successful woman. He's attracted to her. He wants a partner who's building something, who's ambitious, who's respected in her own right. What he's testing for is whether you believe you deserve that success or whether you'll shrink to fit his comfort zone. The woman who passes owns her achievements fully. She shares her wins with genuine excitement. She doesn't need his validation, but she invites him to celebrate with her. And if he can't handle it, if he becomes competitive or dismissive or distant, she recognizes that as his limitation, not hers. That response tells him she won't make herself smaller for anyone. And paradoxically, that makes him want to rise higher himself, because men are inspired by women who set standards, not women who lower them. Then there's the emotional exposure test. At some point, he shares something vulnerable, a fear, a past wound, a moment of uncertainty. And he's observing what you do with it. Do you use it against him later? Do you see him as weaker? Do you try fixing him or managing his emotions? Or do you simply hold space for his humanity without judgment? Most women fail this test in one of two ways. Either they become his therapist, trying to solve his problems and manage his feelings, which shifts the dynamic from romantic to maternal. Or they unconsciously lose respect, seeing his vulnerability as weakness rather than trust. Both responses tell him he's not safe being fully human around you. But the woman who passes, she receives his vulnerability with quiet strength. She doesn't try to fix or analyze. She simply listens, accepts, and continues seeing him fully, even in his unguarded moments. That response creates emotional safety. And emotional safety transforms attraction into deep commitment. When a man feels he can be vulnerable without losing your respect, without being judged, and without you trying to control or fix him, he bonds to you at a level that transcends physical attraction. You become the one person he can truly exhale around. And that's the woman he'll protect, pursue, and prioritize above all others. Here's what connects all these tests together. They're not about performing correctly. They're about revealing who you are at your core. And the woman who passes isn't trying to pass. She's simply living from such deep self-worth that her natural responses align perfectly with what creates lasting attraction. She doesn't chase when he withdraws because she's secure. She doesn't abandon boundaries because she values herself. She doesn't spiral into jealousy because she trusts her worth. She doesn't dim her light because she knows her success doesn't threaten real love. And she doesn't judge his vulnerability because she's emotionally mature enough to hold space for another human's complexity. Every test is actually an opportunity to demonstrate that you're not like the others, that you're not performing or pretending, that your worth isn't dependent on his validation. And when you consistently respond from that centered place, something shifts in how he sees you. You stop being an option and become the option, not because you manipulated the outcome, but because you simply refuse to abandon yourself for anyone. Let's talk about the test most women don't even recognize. The time test. He takes his time before defining the relationship, before introducing you to important people, before making future plans. And most women interpret this as disinterest or fear of commitment. They start pushing for labels, demanding clarity, trying to accelerate the timeline because uncertainty feels unbearable. But here's what he's actually doing. He's making sure, because men understand that commitment isn't just a feeling, it's a decision that impacts everything. And the wrong decision is costly, emotionally and practically. When you push for commitment before he's ready, you fail the test immediately. You communicate that your need for security outweighs his need for certainty. You're asking him to make a decision based on your timeline, not on genuine readiness. But the woman who passes trusts the process. She's not passive or waiting around desperately. She's actively living her life, evaluating him just as much as he's evaluating her. And that patience, that lack of pressure, gives him space to choose her freely. And a choice made freely is a choice that lasts. Here's the truth about these tests that transforms everything. They're not designed to trick you or eliminate you. They're designed to find you, the real you, beneath the performance and the fear and the desperate need to be chosen. Because a high-value man knows that surface compatibility isn't enough. He needs to know that when life gets hard, when attraction fades momentarily, when challenges arise, you'll still be the same grounded, self-assured woman he met in the beginning. So many women ask, why does he make it so complicated? Why can't he just love me if he's interested? But it's not complicated, it's careful, because he's learned that temporary emotions create permanent consequences. He's learned that infatuation isn't love, that chemistry isn't compatibility, that someone can be perfect on paper and wrong in reality. These tests are his way of seeing past the performance to the person. And if you're performing, you'll eventually fail. But if you're authentic, you'll pass without even trying. Now, here's where most relationship advice gets it completely wrong. They tell you to recognize these tests and respond strategically. Play cool when he withdraws. Act unbothered when he mentions other women. Pretend you're busy when he's not prioritizing you. But that's just another performance, and performances eventually crack under pressure. What you need isn't strategy. It's genuine self-worth. Because when your worth is real, your responses are authentic. You're not playing cool, you are cool. You're not acting unbothered, you are unbothered. You're not pretending to be busy, you are busy building a life that fulfills you with or without him. This is the emotional shift that transforms everything. The moment you stop trying to pass his tests and start living in alignment with your own values, you naturally pass every test without effort. Because the tests aren't looking for perfection, they're looking for authenticity. They're looking for a woman so secure in herself that external circumstances, including his behavior, don't shake her foundation. Think about the women you know who effortlessly attract high-quality men. They're not more beautiful or more successful or more available. They're more grounded. They have an unshakable sense of self that doesn't bend or break based on male attention. When a man tests them, they don't even register it as a test. They simply respond from their truth. And that truth is magnetic because it's rare. In a world of women trying to be chosen, the woman who's already chosen herself stands out instantly. Let me share what men confess when they're being completely honest. One man told me about a woman he dated briefly. She was everything I thought I wanted, he said. Beautiful, kind, always available. But the moment I pulled back even slightly, she fell apart. She needed constant reassurance. She couldn't handle uncertainty. I realized I'd spend the entire relationship managing her emotions instead of building with her. He walked away not because she wasn't enough, but because she couldn't pass the emotional resilience test. Another man shared the opposite experience. I tested her without even meaning to, he admitted. I cancelled plans last minute, and she just said, no problem, enjoy your night, and went out with her friends. I didn't text for 3 days, and when I finally reached out, she was warm but not desperate. Another woman tried getting my attention at a party, and she didn't even flinch. I realized she didn't need me. She wanted me, but she didn't need me. And that made all the difference. That woman didn't pass his tests because she was strategic. She passed because she was genuinely secure. Here's what these stories reveal. Men are searching for emotional stability in a partner. Not robotic coldness or fake indifference, but genuine inner peace. A woman who can weather storms without losing herself. A woman who doesn't need him to be whole, but chooses to build with him anyway. That's the woman who passes every test, not because she's trying to, but because she's simply being who she is. So how do you embody this energy? How do you become the woman who naturally passes these tests without game playing or performance? You start by reconnecting with your worth outside of romantic validation. You build a life so fulfilling that a man's attention is an addition, not the foundation. You establish standards and hold them, not to manipulate outcomes, but because you genuinely won't accept less than you deserve. You develop emotional resilience by trusting yourself through uncertainty instead of seeking constant external reassurance. The woman a high-value man commits to isn't the most agreeable or the most accommodating. She's the most grounded. She has boundaries that don't bend. She has a life that doesn't revolve around him. She has self-worth that doesn't require his validation. And when he tests her, whether consciously or unconsciously, her responses consistently communicate one message. I know who I am, and I'm not changing that for anyone. This doesn't mean being cold or distant or playing games. It means being authentically yourself, even when that risks losing him. It means choosing your peace over his approval. It means trusting that the right person will appreciate your boundaries, your success, your independence, and your emotional strength, not feel threatened by them. Because here's the final truth. A man who can't handle a high-value woman isn't a high-value man, and you don't pass tests to convince the wrong person to choose you. You pass tests by being yourself so fully that the right person recognizes immediately that you're exactly what he's been searching for. So here we are, full circle. You've learned what these tests really are, why men use them, and what separates the women who pass from the women who don't. But here's the truth that changes everything. You don't need to learn how to pass these tests. You need to become the woman who doesn't notice them because she's too busy building a life she loves. Today, right now, you can begin shifting your entire approach, not by memorizing responses or strategizing behavior, but by coming home to your worth. Every time you feel that urge to chase reassurance when he pulls back, pause and ask yourself, what would a woman who knows her value do right now? Every time you want to bend your boundaries to keep him comfortable, ask, what am I abandoning in myself to hold on to someone else? The woman who keeps a high-value man's commitment isn't the one who tries to pass his tests. She's the one whose authentic self naturally aligns with everything he's been searching for. She doesn't fear his tests because she's not performing. She's simply being. And when you operate from that place of genuine self-worth, you stop attracting men who test to eliminate and start attracting men who test to confirm what they already suspect, that you're exactly who they've been waiting for. Start small. Begin by prioritizing your peace over his approval. When he goes quiet, don't spiral into anxiety. Engage fully in your own life. When he crosses a boundary, state it clearly, without anger or explanation. When he mentions other women, stay completely unbothered because you know your worth isn't determined by competition. When good things happen in your life, celebrate fully without shrinking yourself. These aren't strategies, these are standards. And standards are what separate men date casually from women. Men commit to deeply. Apply what you've learned, not as a game plan, but as a return to yourself. When a man enters your life, don't ask, am I passing his tests? Ask, is his presence adding value to my already fulfilling life? Because when you lead from that place, you attract partners who value your wholeness, not men who need you to be broken enough to need them. And if you take one message from this entire video, let it be this. You don't need to perform to be chosen. You need to be yourself so completely that the right man recognizes immediately he'd be a fool to test you out of his life. So start today, stop trying to pass tests and start being untestable. Align with your worth, your peace, and your power, because when you do, the right man won't need to test you for long. He'll just know